Well, thank you for joining us. My name is Kent Hovind from Pensacola, Florida, and this is Dr. Larry Tyler from Washington, Missouri. And he's a chiropractor.
Yes.
How long have you been in chiropractic?
I've been a chiropractor for 15 years now.
15 years.
15 years.
I have been to thousands of chiropractors, and you fixed my back, brother. It was awesome. So I thought I'd put together a video on the Bible and health. And you call your seminar, when you speak on this topic, Polar Bears, Bumblebees, and Healthcare. Why is that?
Well, the story of the polar bears comes about trying to open up people's minds.
Okay.
We have been brainwashed. We've been brainwashed in lots of areas of our lives, and healthcare is not an exception to that rule. The polar bear story goes like this. The city of Denver was given a gift back in the early 80s. It was a polar bear cub, and it was shipped to them in a transport cage. And this polar bear cub had the room to take about 3.5 shuffle steps in one direction, and it kind of turned around and took 3.5 shuffle steps back the other way. And that was all the room that this polar bear cub had. Well, the people who know polar bears went to the city of Denver and said, hey, you better get this polar bear out of this cage real soon, otherwise it's going to suffer damage that's going to last a lifetime. Well, in the infinite wisdom of bureaucracy, it took about 8 years for them to complete the building of the Denver Zoo. And the big day came around, they had their polar bear exhibit all ready to go, and meanwhile this polar bear had spent the last 8 years taking 3.5 shuffle steps and then 3.5 shuffle steps back, because that's all the room it had now. Well, the day came around, they opened up the new exhibit, and they opened up the door, and what happened? The polar bear took 3.5 steps, stopped, and then took 3.5 shuffle steps back. And to this day, that bear is still at the Denver Zoo, and all it does is take 3.5 shuffle steps forward and 3.5 shuffle steps back. It has been so programmed that its entire universe at this point is based on the polar bear cage.
Okay.
Everywhere it looks, it sees the polar bear cage.
All right.
Now, they've been able to distract the polar bear every now and then. If they give it a big old salmon, okay, or give it a pine tree to play with, well, it can get distracted and it will kind of wander out of its zone a little bit. But the very next day, it's back to the same old way because that's the way it's always done things. That's been its entire existence. Well, for the last 100, 150 years now, our entire healthcare system has been based on allopathic principles. Okay, feel bad, take a pill. Feel real bad, take another pill. And if it gets real bad, then we'll just cut it out.
Right.
And that's the whole mindset of healthcare in the United States these days. So I tell people the polar bear story in order to challenge them to open up their mind. If all you're going to go through life is looking at the polar bear cage, okay, then you're never going to change any of the patterns and any of the things that's happening.
Right.
And the state of health right now in the United States is not exactly anything to be proud of.
Correct.
I mean, we spend a whole lot of money on healthcare, but we're ranked 20th or 21st in the list of industrialized nations as far as the healthcare of our population is concerned. We have more diseases now than we've ever had. Cancer and autoimmune diseases are running through the roof. Okay, we are living a little bit older, but that's not because we're healthier. We're living a little bit older because we've gotten pretty good at repairing trauma, and that's caused a statistical shift. Okay, so I start off with polar bears, just trying to challenge people to open up their minds and not fall into the polar bear cage. Another way I've analogized that is, you know, if you get in a boat in St. Louis and you travel downstream, well, you end up in New Orleans. And if you get back up in the boat in St. Louis and go downstream, you end up in New Orleans. And every time you get in a boat in St. Louis and go downstream, you're going to end up in New Orleans.
Right.
And that's okay if you want to go to New Orleans. But if you want to end up someplace different, say Chicago, okay, well then you better do something other than get in a boat underneath the arch and travel downstream. And that's what's happening. You know, every 20 years or so, the medical community comes out with a new magic bullet. You know, here, take this pill, it's going to cause our problem or solve our problems. And then another 20 years later, they'll come back and say, well, we've got a new drug to solve that problem. And we've got a new drug to solve that problem. And we've gone through several generations of antibiotics and pain relievers and all these other drug therapies, and we keep ending up in the same place, unhealthy and sick.
Right.
Dying of chronic diseases that we really shouldn't be dealing with at this point.
Well, and they keep making money along the way.
Oh, and they keep making money along the way, absolutely. Matter of fact, this year in 1998, the pharmaceutical companies were kind of bragging that they made more money in the first 6 months of this year, a percentage increase than they've ever had in the history of the pharmaceutical industries.
I read a great book on how Rockefeller used to sell oil, regular crude oil, as you know, snake oil basically.
Yeah, exactly.
To heal everything, cure all. And that's how he got rich.
Oh, yeah.
Selling bottles of this stuff, and he really has got a profound influence on the pharmaceuticals.
Yeah. The pharmaceutical industry is, well, I mean, first off, it's being regulated by the FDA. which is made up of former pharmaceutical executives.
Sure.
Okay, so you know you've got the proverbial fox watching the hen house, and what happens is you know they come up with a new drug. They've just spent millions of dollars, maybe billions of dollars, developing this new chemical compound. Okay, and it may be beneficial for altering some chemical states, change the way the body's working. Okay, but that doesn't make it beneficial to the whole system.
Right.
You know, a lot of times we are dying from our cures as opposed to dying from our diseases.
Oh, that's the truth.
And the pharmaceutical industry is right in the middle of that. That's just where their head is.
Well, as a creationist, of course, I'm interested in how God fits into all this. The Bible says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth.
Yes.
So if God created it, he must have a plan, must have an order to it. And I teach in my seminars that God told Adam and Eve what to eat and what not to eat. And you and I have been talking earlier about how that the whole world is made up of simply a few basic atoms.
The universe as we know it is made up of 96 elements.
Right.
And those are all the pieces that he used to make everything.
Similar to 26 letters of the alphabet make all the books ever written in English.
Yes.
And the same basic elements make up all the structures of the universe. And the human body, you said, has basically a pretty high percentage of just a few of these elements.
Right. And basically, 96% of the human body is made up of 4 different elements.
Okay.
Okay. The other 4% is made up of 22 others.
Okay.
Okay. So the basic design and building of our system is made up of 26 elements. Now we use a few more in its everyday maintenance and running of it.
Right.
Okay, the fuel, if you will.
Sure.
Okay, but the building blocks is basically consisting of 26 elements.
See, the Bible says God made man of the dust of the ground.
Yes, and breathed life into him.
And breathed life into him. So we're just made out of the dust of the ground. Now the systems of the body, there's numerous different systems. And when I taught biology and anatomy, I compared it to a car. You can study a car system by system. Study the brake system. Study the propulsion system. Study whatever. And then you learn how to integrate the systems.
Right.
And that's probably the simplest way to learn the human body, too, is study a few systems and then see how they tie together.
Exactly.
Tell us of your specialty, or what do you like studying about that?
Well, my specialty is that of a chiropractor. The chiropractic profession is based on the knowledge that the central nervous system is responsible for controlling and coordinating all the functions and all the structures of the human body.
Right.
Everything that takes place in the human body is controlled or coordinated by the nervous system. The function of the spinal column and the skull is to protect that nervous system. Okay, when the spinal column and the skull become distorted, okay, minor distortions, it interferes with the function of the neurological system. And as soon as you start interfering with the function of the neurological system, then whatever is being controlled or coordinated by that nervous system cannot properly function.
So if you have 4 brake lines going to each wheel of your car, one of them is pinched. That wheel doesn't stop.
That wheel no longer responds to you pushing on that brake pedal the way it's supposed to.
And if part of your nervous system is pinched, for lack of a better word, whatever it controls cannot respond.
Exactly. I've analogized the nervous system like a command center. If you had a general of an army, okay, and he was sitting in this central location, and he had all these outposts spread throughout his region, and he had messengers that brought messages back and forth from the command center to those outposts. Okay, and if there was an invading army attacking one of the outposts, well, then that outpost would send a message to the commander, and the commander would now direct his reinforcements over to that side of the attack.
Right.
Okay, and depending on where the information came from, the general would know where to send his extra troops. Okay, well, if that communication line got broken, okay, that outpost would now become vulnerable to attacks.
Sure.
It would start breaking down. Okay, the army that was attacking him would have a better ability to overcome it. Okay, it would not be able to get its supplies to maintain itself. It would not be able to get the reinforcements it needs to attack the invading army. Okay, well, that's the way our nervous system works with all of our bodily parts. Most of the infectious agents that we deal with in our world are referred to as opportunistic organisms.
Sure.
They only affect the weak host, and they only affect the weakest part of the weak host. Okay, and that directly implies response of the system. If you get an invading organism, say a bacteria or a virus, okay, and it's breathed in through our nose, and our sensory membranes and sensory nerve endings up into the nasal cavity and things like that sends a message to the brain saying we've got an invading organism in here. And then the brain can respond appropriately to it. It can increase the secretion of the mucous membranes. Okay, it can increase circulation so that there's more blood flow to it.
Right.
It can increase the activity of things such as the spleen and the medullary cavities and the lymph system in order to fight the infection more effectively. But if that message is never received by the brain, then all those functions don't take place. And that makes an infection that allows an opportunistic organism to get in there and take hold, okay, and start causing signs of ill health and dysfunction.
So what most people do is they worry about attacking that organism instead of building up the immune system.
Exactly. It's treating the symptom.
Treating the symptom.
It's treating the symptom. A good analogy I like to use is if you're driving down the road and the red light comes on the dash. You know, they're called idiot lights for a reason.
Right.
Okay, because if you're only waiting for the red light to come on and you're not paying any attention to any of the early warning signs, okay, then you're not taking care of the car the way you're supposed
Correct.
to.
Right.
Okay. Well, if you're driving down the road and a little red light comes on that says you're low on oil, you pull off to the side of the road, and at that point you have two options. You can get in the car and check the oil, and if it's low, you certainly can add a little bit of oil to the car, and that fixes the problem. And you can drive down the road and not have another care. Or you can get to the side of the road and you can find the plug that goes to the little red light.
Unplug the light.
And you unplug the light. If you unplug the light, once again, you've gotten rid of your symptom. The red light is gone. But that doesn't mean the car is working any better. And so you drive on down the road, and then next thing you know, you're throwing a rod, and now you have a major problem that started from a simple little problem. And that's what we're dealing with so much of our healthcare problems today.
Right.
From, you know, our children get exposed to their first antibiotic before they're 1 hour old. We wash infants' eyes out now with antibiotics. We used to use silver nitrate. And now we do that just in case the mother has some sort of venereal disease.
Right.
But instead, of course, checking the mothers to make sure, you know, to see whether or not they fall into that category, they're just going to wash out all the infant's eyes.
Yeah.
Another good use of resource.
Sure.
Okay, I mean, gee, a $10 dose of antibiotics, and there's 3 million babies born every year. Okay,
that's a lot of money.
A lot of money for the pharmaceutical industries. And so they get their first dose of antibiotics when they're less than an hour old. And then before they're a day old, they get their first shot of vaccinations, okay, in which they're getting injected with a foreign substance, a virus, the hepatitis virus. And at the same time, they're also getting exposed to things such as formaldehyde and mercury and aluminum, which are known toxins to the human body. Formaldehyde's a known carcinogen. Nobody would even consider feeding a teaspoon of formaldehyde to their little baby. Okay, but yet we're injecting it directly into their bloodstream when they're less than a day old. Aluminum and mercury are known toxins to the nervous system. Okay, they've been linked to things such as autism, attention deficit disorders, Alzheimer's. Okay, all sorts of mental handicaps are associated with the accumulation of aluminum and mercury in the nervous tissue.
Can that come from cooking in aluminum pans?
Well, that was one of our first concerns.
Sure.
Okay, was whether or not when we first identified the aluminum concentration in Alzheimer's patients. I mean, we started down this pathway. We checked our antiperspirants. Okay, antiperspirants contain aluminum chlorohydrate. But we did some studies on that, and that didn't seem to be a major factor. And then we started looking at our soda cans and our cooking utensils. Okay, and yes, when you heat up aluminum, a little bit of those aluminum molecules are pulled off of that
Right.
compound, and it does get absorbed into the food. Excuse me. And that, you know, that can provide a little bit of aluminum into the system, but that didn't even seem to be the major culprit. At which point they thought, well, then this aluminum thing is just a coincidence. Well, they forgot to check one other area, and that was our vaccinations.
Putting it straight into the blood.
Putting it straight into the blood. When we take in a foreign substance, be it a bacteria or a toxic mineral or something like that, and we bring it in through normal means, the mucous membranes, the digestive tract, those areas are lined with lymphatic tissues, okay, that are designed to deal with those substances. Okay, but when we inject it directly into the bloodstream, we short circuit all those things,
Right.
and suddenly you have, you know, toxic metals circulating through the bloodstream.
Well, see, you can drink snake venom, many types of snake, and it won't hurt you.
Right.
Your system can digest it, but you put it into the blood, it'll kill you.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's a great analogy to realize that people, here we are giving this to the kids when they're born.
14 times between the ages of 0 and 2 years old, we inject our children. Actually, it's recently been updated to 15 recommended shots. Okay, and every one of them contains aluminum and mercury. And all of our so-called new safe vaccines contain formaldehyde.
Okay, now if I was the devil, to get the big picture of the whole thing, the devil hates humanity.
Yes.
He wants to kill everybody for several reasons. We're made in the image of God, and he hates us because of that, because he wanted to be God. Isaiah 14 talks about that. And also, the prophecy in Genesis chapter 3 was that the seed of the woman would bruise the head of the serpent. So Satan knows that one of these human beings is going to come along and destroy him. So his rationality is, well, I'll just kill them all.
Right.
That's what he tried with Herod, killing all the babies at the time of Christmas.
Exactly.
Okay, just kill them all. And so he really wants to destroy humanity. And I think there's a multi-pronged attack to destroy humanity physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially. And if you look at the scriptures,